Hello everybody, welcome back to ESPN's Football Forecast with myself, James Allcott. Joining me this week, we have a cracking footballer and we've got Glenn Murray, an unbelievable striker, and Nubaid. Nubaid, how are you, firstly?
I'm very good, and I was a very good footballer in my heyday.
Yeah, you also got cooked by me once. Search it on YouTube, you can go and find that. Anyway, the relegation battle. Glenn, had a couple of these. Have you ever got relegated?
Never been relegated in my career.
Lovely.
But proud of that, actually.
Yeah, you should be. You should be. Well, you basically kept those teams up, I think. Certainly 1 year with Brighton, you were on fire, weren't you?
Did okay.
Yeah, I've given you your flowers. Let's get into this. Southampton at the bottom. We're going to run through all of the teams here that are still battling it out. It's still really, really tight. And all of the teams generally have got some really tricky fixtures. And at the end of the video, we're going to try and put forward the three teams that we think will go down at the end of it. Let's start off with Southampton, who might be sort of one of those that we kind of feel like have pretty much gone at this stage. If Southampton do go down, what's the main thing to blame when it comes to this one?
I would say probably too much change, and I would go right back to Haroon. I feel as though he was the right man to get them out of trouble. I feel as though this is probably something that's happened over the last 3 seasons. They've been knocking on that relegation door, and Haroon, he's pulled amazing sort of runs of games out. I feel as though the rug's been pulled out from under him on a number of occasions by selling their best players and not replaced them. I think they've gone sort of very deep into that youth generation, and it hasn't quite worked. Listen, if they could keep that team together, I'm sure it'd be a very successful team, but right now it's maybe just a little bit inexperienced.
See, I think that's a really interesting point, because I think probably part of the reason of them going down is the summer recruitment, but another reason for hope is the summer recruitment. Yeah. They really did go with some young players, none of whom have actually done too badly, but kind of piecing it all together, it's kind of left them feeling a little bit short. Also, in terms of players leaving, I know this is a while ago now, but they haven't really ever replaced Danny Ings in terms of the goals. They don't score enough goals. Is there any way you see them sneaking enough victories here with Ruben Sellers in charge?
Looking at the table, even if they do, they need everyone else to drop points, which I just don't think at this stage of the season is very likely. I mean, you saw Everton turn up and batter Brighton, so you're in a situation where you're going, Leeds, can you drop points for us? Leicester, Everton, even Forest to an extent. And then they also have to win all 3 of their games, which, I mean, when they drew 3-3 against Arsenal, I had a lot of hope for them. I left that game thinking, this is where you get your momentum. But it was essentially just a freak result.
Yeah.
And now they're in a situation where you're going, you've got to take on Fulham at home. They might win that. Fulham haven't been great. They obviously beat Leicester 5-3. Then you get Brighton away and Liverpool at home. It's an awful run at the end of the season.
Yeah, they can only get to 33 points, and the next team's got 30. So you would imagine they'd have to be in that bottom 3 by the end of it. Actually, they've been sort of plucky's a good word. I think they've been plucky, especially since Ruben Sellers had come in, and he came in, I think, as a bit of a stopgap. Because I think Haroon was struggling. And I think it had gone stale. I think the guy that came in Nathan Jones, that's where it sort of felt like it burnt down to the ground. And generally for me, an unwritten rule is if you get through 3 managers in a season, that season is going to be a negative one.
So what you're saying, Leeds are going down as well?
Well, so let's move on to Leeds. Because, I mean, to go within 14 months, to go from Bielsa ball to Allardyce ball, that spells relegation, does it not?
Well, I think this coming weekend, Newcastle at home is huge. We saw them last weekend away at City, and they did relatively well. When it sort of come to the end of the game, they were still in the game. They still could have got something out of it. They just couldn't quite summon that last chance, that last opportunity to get a point out of the game. But I just think a week with Sam Allardyce might have showed that defence up a little bit. And when I look at their fixtures, I mean, Newcastle are flying high, but Ellen Road can be a real cauldron. Then they've got West Ham away, who look like they're safe. And then last day, they welcome Spurs to Ellen Road. And who knows with Spurs? And like I say, when Ellen Road, it is that, I know it's cliche, but it's that 12th man. So even though I do think that Leeds are really struggling, I quite like the look of their fixtures.
2 home games. Like, if they get past Newcastle, and I have a feeling they might, the fans, I think, will get on board with Sam Allardyce. I think the feeling when Sam Allardyce came in was like, what are we doing? We've had this great strategy with young managers coming in, this philosophy of young players playing attractive football, and I know Sam Allardyce thinks he still plays attractive football, but they now go to Sam Allardyce, who's sort of like, can you save us from relegation? And for him, it's a free hit, really. If he doesn't, I only had 4 games, and if he does, he's Big Sam all over again. Beat Newcastle, and they could seriously have a shout.
How do you feel about that strategy of going away from that hectic nature of Bielsa ball? Jesse Marsh was within that same strategy a little bit. Gracia, that kind of felt like we couldn't really find a manager that we wanted right now, so let's go with him, and they couldn't wait to get rid of him. Sacked him on his birthday, the poor bloke. But Allardyce, it's contained, it's percentage football. In a relegation battle, when your confidence is low, is that a smart strategy to sort of turn to?
Well, it was only gone one way under Gracia, so I feel as though, it's panic stations.
Because most Leeds fans are okay with Allardyce, which feels strange to me, but I get it as well.
They're just desperate. Desperate.
I think that is the word, desperate. I don't think Sam Allardyce, if he does keep up, he won't be the manager next season. There's no longevity in him, but right now he's a firefighter. He's got a firefighting job, and he's trying to keep him in the Premier League, whether that's through fear or whatnot. But it's going to be,
when you're a player in that kind of team, is the focus for you that let's stay in the game rather than let's go out and score goals?
I think it's got to be for Leeds, because Leeds that has been their approach, hasn't it? Let's go out, let's be open, let's play attractive football, exciting football, but you let a lot of goals in that way and you leave yourself open to counter-attacks and things. So for me, I think Sam Allardyce, it might not be pretty, but I think it's quite shrewd. Whether he's got enough time, I'm not quite sure.
I wonder if he's got the right bodies there as well. It feels like there's a lot of pressure on Bamford, because they are going to, you would imagine they would go a little bit longer, maybe try to get the ball to Harrison, get those crosses in. Time will tell, but I think you're right. This weekend, that Newcastle fixture is absolutely enormous. Also on 30 points, a team that we just did not expect to be anywhere around this, Leicester City. The truth, I think with Leicester City and Everton, sometimes you can get lost in sort of the name of the club in the last few seasons. That the Everton squad and the Leicester City squad, and to focus on Leicester City for a second, that squad is all over the place for me. That's why I think they're in a really tricky place, because they have got some talent on paper. Maddison, Harvey Barnes has scored 12 goals this year, Iniacho, Vardy, in terms of what you remember with him. But there's a lot of players there that have been fantastic for them, but are at the kind of end of that cycle. And if you think of the spine of that team, that successful team, indeed he has fallen off a cliff in terms of form. Johnny Evans is never fit, and there's sort of reports that he might be at the end of it now. Kasper Schmeichel's obviously not there anymore.
I think that's the one for me.
And Vardy up top, has always been that XG buster. He's not been able to do it as well this season. And so when you take that all away, and your two top players for me, Maddison and Tielemans, they don't want to be there either, regardless of what they're saying or not going to be. It's a recipe for disaster.
I think that's harsh that they don't want to be there. Their future might not be there, but listen, they've been at the football club quite a while now, and they won't want to leave it in the state it's in and possibly relegated. So I think it's harsh, but I think also there's that subconscious mentality where like your mind is somewhere else to a certain extent, and you're going to be all right. When I look at the group of teams we've got in the relegation zone, and in that conversation, Everton got a taste of it last year, didn't they? Even though you didn't really think that their squad would be there, and Leicester as well for me this season. When I look at the others, Forest, Leeds, Southampton, even though we're saying Southampton have gone, they are all clubs that, when this Premier League season kicked off, fully expected to be in this situation, and they were comfortable. They knew that it could possibly go down the last day. So even though it's nervy and there's a lot of tension, they expected this. Whereas when I'm looking at Everton and Leicester, I think they're looking around the changing room. They're shell shocked. They're like, how have we got in this situation? And then I think that's when things start going wrong, and squads become fragmented. It's like,
do you think mentally that makes a difference? Like, if you've been down there, you always hear the cliche of like, but they were in relegation, they know what it's like down there. When you've got top quality players like James Maddison, Tielemans, Vardy, Iniacho, James was reeled off loads of names. Do you think the mental side actually makes a difference, that being down there is actually like, whoa, we were not expecting to be here?
I think there's more of a settledness around the training ground. It's not like panic stations. Everyone's not like really worried. I feel as though there'll be a calmness and an understanding of the situation. And when I look at Everton, and I actually think that Everton will get safer. I think they will stay up by the skin of their teeth. But when I look at Leicester, it's sort of that one where everyone's together in the other clubs, and I'm just wondering if Leicester are just starting to drift apart and the fun's starting to get called agents and things, and you're starting to think...
And also I think the thing of the desperation of it can be useful, right? So with Leicester City, there's been probably so much talk throughout the season of, oh, you'll be fine. Yeah. And that's not a nice place to be. Like, you've got to be hungry and scavenging for every point that you can get. And I think that's the problem with Leicester City. I think you've seen it with Chelsea this year. I've seen it with QPR, my team, where you've got a lot of players they think they should be looking up there, and then they find themselves in this sort of ether. And I think that's what happened with Leicester. And they thought they'd be okay, and they've just kept getting sucked back into it due to poor individual errors and defensive mistakes
Just a goalkeeper.
as well.
If they had a goalkeeper who's Premier League proven and had played a lot of Premier League games, so they've gone from Kasper Schmeichel, who's the leader for this team, to now having Danny Ward and Iverson, who are two guys who haven't played enough football. Down there, if you can't score goals, you need to be able to prevent goals, and they're not doing either.
And other players other teams in this list have spent hundreds of millions of pounds. Leicester City spent 15 million in the summer, 27 million in January, and again haven't sort of, as much as maybe Schmeichel leaving, it's about those replacements that they haven't brought in, and that squad is not as good as people think, in my opinion. Everton, a similar thing for me. I think that's actually a really weak squad, and actually similar to Allardyce, they brought in Sean Dyche to go, okay, let's sort of Burnley-fy this and make us hard to break down, because I actually think that squad have an understanding of their limitations and are now sort of getting to a point. Great victory last week, and you could see what they were kind of trying to do. With Leicester, Liverpool, Newcastle and West Ham. For Everton, they've got Man City at home, Wolves away and Bournemouth at home with a maximum points potential of 41 points.
That's a lovely fixture list. You go Wolves away, Wolves' this season's pretty much done. Bournemouth at home should be safe by then.
Yeah.
And City at home, I know Arsenal fans and I are all thinking,
we've got a funny feeling, I do too.
It's in between, isn't it? It's in between the two Madrid games that's going to be huge. And I imagine the first thing that Sean Dyche will say is make it as physical as possible.
Sure.
Because obviously the City players will have half an eye on that Madrid game, and they won't want to be injured. They'll want to go into that as fresh as possible. So I imagine City will make changes, and we talk about home and advantages in Goodison Park. I think it'll be quite a cauldron, but a limited squad.
Yeah.
England's number one.
Sure.
And an England striker up front.
Previously an England striker. Well, Leeds have got an England striker up front, if you want to go down that route.
Oh, really?
Bamford's played for England.
I think.
But Cavalier's not been fit.
That's been the problem. I think that's been the problem.
Yeah.
But I think Everton aren't where they should be for me. I think they're a better individual squad than that. I don't know whether they play with great together. For me, the whole club's a mess. It's from top to bottom. I don't think they've got a structure. I think Sean Dyche is trying to put something into place. But then again, I suppose when you look at the other side of it and you look at the managers that have been through the door, none of them have been able to make a change. So then you've either got to look higher up or you've got to look at the players.
For me, masterstroke bringing in Dyche, I think they're already gone if Dyche wasn't the man that was brought in.
I think, are they about 14th or 13th under Dyche in his reign, sort of thing?
Yeah.
So as far as he's concerned, he can hold his head up high and he's done his job. But Tarkowski, he was wanted by a lot of clubs and lauded at Burnley. Cody, lauded at Wolves. I mean,
I think
it's
they
a half
look
decent
better.
Squad.
It's okay, but I think they're playing smart, structured football that's getting them out of it. And there's going to be games where they look really poor, and there'll be games where they'll sneak those wins because Dyche gets them drilled really, really well. And the quality wasn't there, and that's why Lampard failed to a point as well, because he was making it more about the individuals and go on guys, go and create something. Dyche is going, you'll create how I want you to create. That's what I think.
I think if you compare Sean Dyche and Lampard in terms of like management profiles, Sean Dyche has a definite identity. So I think you give Sean Dyche the Barcelona team, they're going to still play Sean Dyche's football. I mean, you give Lampard...
I think you tweak it slightly for Barcelona.
I don't think he would. Then you have Lampard on the other end, and as we've seen at Chelsea, I think he's still finding his identity, which is where I think that was a mismatch at Everton.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, they're just not... They've just had a pretty tough season.
Do you think they're, as a group of players, do you think they're where they should be, or do you think they're better than that?
I don't think they should be in a relegation dogfight, mainly because I backed Bournemouth and Fulham to go down at the start of the season, but then that tells you what I know. But they've got Southampton, who I think have got a worse side, Leeds as well. I think they should be a little bit higher, but I'm not overly surprised.
I think if you do a combined 11 with Everton and a lot of different teams, the other team will do a lot better in a lot of them. and that's why Dyche had to come in. Forest. They brought in a lot of players this year. But their best player throughout the season, Brennan Johnson, who was there at the start of it all. Massive victory against Southampton earlier in the week. But again, it doesn't get... it's not easy for the next two for them. Although, is there something misleading here? Talk to me through these fixtures, Nubaid. Chelsea at home, Arsenal away, Palace away.
Again, they've been really good at home. I think they got a result against Liverpool. They should have had a result against United in one of the fixtures they've played them. Generally speaking, Forest are just a difficult team to play when you're away from home, and Chelsea haven't been good. I think Forest will look at this game and go, we save ourselves by beating Chelsea. And I think generally as well, although they've added loads of players in, I think we're finally seeing an 11 that he actually likes. And I think earlier in the season we were seeing changes up front. Brennan Johnson was playing on the right, then through the middle. Morgan Gibbs-White played as an 8 and then a 10. And I actually think he's their best player. His touch for, I think it was the fourth goal, was nice, unbelievable. It was so nice. And then obviously Arsenal away, which you never know, like the season could be done by then. And then Palace away, Palace's season's done, but Palace is, again, as you'll probably say, is not a nice place to go, regardless of where they are. They need 4 points, and I think they'll be fine. Okay. And I think out of all the teams, they're the one where I go, they will definitely get points at home, and they've got at least one at home.
Right. Who are we going for then? Who will be the 3 teams relegated from the Premier League this season? Glenn?
Well, I've been asked this so many times and I've got it wrong so many times, but now we're getting close. I've got more of an understanding. I'm going to go for Southampton, Leicester and Leeds.
Okay. Nubaid?
It's impossible to call, man. I'll go Southampton. Like, in my mind, I think Leeds will survive, I think Forest will survive, and I think Everton will survive. But someone's got to go.
You can't make friends all right.
Yeah, come on.
I'll go with it as it stands. Southampton, Leeds and Leicester.
Okay. I'm going to stick with what I did a couple of weeks ago, because it is still tight in there. I'm going to go Southampton, Leicester, Forest. The 3 to go down.
I do look at Forest's last 3 games and they're tough. They're really tough games, I think.
They get 4 points.
Right, guys, let us know, as the guys squabble over there, let us know which 3 teams are going to be getting relegated from the Premier League this year.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube, and for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app, and for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.